Namaste and welcome. Welcome to the understanding of yogic philosophy, the science behind the yoga. Why does yoga works? What does yoga means? How we can start the practice of yoga into our daily lifestyle? What are benefits of practicing yoga? And how should someone start practicing yoga? My name is Rohit Rawat. Let's understand first with this word itself, yoga. Yes, you heard right. Yoga instead of yoga. Yoga is a Sanskrit root word which means unite, unions, to add, to bind together. When we write it down or translate it in an English vocabulary, it pronunciated or written as yoga. But the root word is yoga. Is similarly as asan compared to asanas, pranayam compared to pranayamas. So yoga means unite, union, to bind something together. In order to bind something or to someone, we need two objects or 2 points or 2 persons or 2 entities. From what or to whom to combine them together. A plus B. Here, understand for right now, this A is your individual consciousness. And this B point is the whole universal consciousness. A state where this individual consciousness unite with the universal consciousness, which is actually within the individual consciousness, hidden deep inside. That state is called yoga. It's a noun. It's a state which happens or where you becomes universal consciousness. Right? An example. A tree is always hidden inside the seed. As the seed is grown in a right atmosphere, in the right temperature, it sprout that whole tree out. Exactly, the individual consciousness put in or have given under a right discipline and a right practice. It sprout the universal consciousness from within. That practice is called yoga, we uniting together, combining together. But if I just see this interpretation of yoga, it slightly becomes challenging to practice, or it's just a state, it happens. So if I see this way, there are very less yogis these days out there. But if I see a different definition of yoga, yujraye iti samadhi, a beautiful definition of yoga. It is mostly as a verb. We are using this as a verb here, not as noun anymore. Yujraye iti samadhi. Any practice which leads to samadhi is also considered as yoga. This is a very beautiful word here, samadhi. Samadhi. Samadhi is made of 2 words. Sama, actually 3. Sama plus a plus dhi, where dhi represent the mind, dhi, the anxious, the stressed mind, and sama means even or balance. So when any practice which leads or which balance the fluctuations of the stressed or the anxious mind, this practice also called as yoga. When mind becomes very calm, like a still surface of water, it is easier to look inward and find that universal consciousness within. This practice or this technique is also called yoga. Now understand, we as human always stays in a state of suffering. Let's understand from old scriptures how yogic scriptures explains this. There are 3 types of sufferings we see in yogic scriptures. Adi bhautik. Bhautik means materialistic. Suffering between 2 humans, between 2 friends, between student and teacher, colleague and boss, you and your subordinates, between two nations, between two egos, this tension between two entities called suffering on both ends. And this type of suffering is called Adi-bhautik. The second way we see suffering is called Adi-daivik. Daivik means natural situations. COVID came. A lot of us lost our jobs, lost those people who we used to love, lost someone very close to us. In this situation, you have no control. Natural disasters. Any situation where you have no direct control over the situation comes under this category, Adi-daivik. The last and the third we see is called Adi-yatmik, internal suffering. Suffering which caused by my own thought. Suffering between two thoughts, suffering between the thoughts which is within rising. Am I good enough? Am I doing this right? Is this life? What should be purpose of life? Internal driven questions or internal driven queries also give sometimes sufferings. This type of suffering is called Adi-yatmik. There's one common word between these three things: Adi-bhautik, Adi-daivik, Adi-yatmik. This word Adi, which we already have divided earlier. The mind. The anxious mind. So if I see this way, all this suffering we have talked about, the root cause of suffering is stress, the anxious mind. Understand this here. Pain is your choice. If my hand get cut, it start to bleed, start to hurt, that's pain. This is pain. It's not my choice. I will feel that sensation of pain. But suffering all start within my mind. I chose to suffer. So all this suffering are mind born. Adhija. Born with anxious mind. So either we suffer throughout life because of this anxious mind, and this Adi or this anxious mind leads to Vyadhi, dis-ease in our life. Either we try to lead towards Samadhi, balancing this anxious state of mind, which leaves harmony and peace in our life. So from this stressed mind, two path comes. One path leads to dis-ease and one path leads to peace and happiness. This path which leads to peace and happiness, this path is also called as yoga. Yoga which helps to ease, which gives peace and happiness in our life. That process is yoga. Beautiful journey is yoga. Imagine there is a pool of water, and under the water there is mud and a lot of dirt. On top of water there's a lot of ripples creating. When we start to look our self-image on the surface of water, it becomes impossible because of the ripples and the dirt underneath. That suffering and dirt within us, that pool of water is a representation of our mind. Sometimes it's hard to sit inside and look inward because the pool or the pond of water is still dirty and have a lot of ripples on top. A lot of fluctuations are coming. Multiple thoughts, multiple inputs throughout the day. Internal driven inputs, external driven inputs from senses. Scrolling. All these inputs create deep impact of fluctuations in our mind. Imagine somehow you stop all the ripples on the surface of water. Imagine somehow you deep clean the pond. The water becomes still and clear. Then only you could see the self-reflections quite clearly. And that's what yoga does. It cleans from deep within the dirt. And then it stops the fluctuating ripples on top of the surface of mind. Mind becomes still. When mind becomes still, we start to self-reflect ourselves quite easily. And then the sprout, that tree of consciousness comes out. And this process is called yoga. Let's understand this process one more step deeper. So when body and breath are combined together, a practice which combines body, movement and breath, that is called asana. When breath is combined with mind, that is called practice of pranayama. When your mind is combined with your intellect, that is called pratyahar, withdrawing of senses. When intellect is combined with one point focus, at one point at one time, that is called dharana, concentration. And when intellect is connected or combined with swa, the self, that is called dhyana, the meditation. And when self dissolves, only consciousness remains. When swa also dissolves, that state is called samadhi, state of enlightenment, state of no fluctuating nature of mind. So yoga have physiology, psychology and philosophy, everything included. Does yoga is a religion? No. Yoga does not talk about metaphysical, the hell and heaven, the gods and demons. It talks about present. It is a practical step-by-step process for a self-realization. So does yoga is a science? Is yoga science? Yes, it is an experimental science. Do it for yourself and find out. It is rational, it is logical. It's talk about the step-by-step process to stopping the fluctuating nature of your mind or your monkey mind. If you have more questions, you can comment below on this video and I will try to explain as much as possible by my understanding of yoga to you. That's it for this video. I'll see you guys very soon. Namaste.